Good stuff. Great. Glad you could join us today. We started a little bit early just to make sure everything's working okay. And today we're going to be talking about building data foundations for AI applications in smart buildings. And I am very happy to be joined by David from Bitpool today. David, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, Matt. Pretty good. Ready to go?
Good stuff. Okay, so just before we get into the presentation, just a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. As you come in, feel free, we want to make this interactive session. We don't have too long. We've got about 30 minutes. And we're going to present some slides. David's going to talk about those, talk about his experience with data from buildings and how he's building an AI applications on top of that data. Then we'd definitely like some comments, questions. So depending on what platform you're using, if you're on LinkedIn, you can type those comments in on questions in, and you should see the comment section there. Similar on YouTube, if you can see the comment section there, feel free to put anything in, and then I'll be able to see them up on my screen, and we'll take those as they come in. What else? Yes, of course, we are recording the session, so you will see that in your feed, I think, later on. I'll also post up the slides on the website later on as well. So how are we doing? Yeah, let's see. As people come in, maybe we can just start with a little bit of introduction. David, how are you doing again?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Not too bad.
That's enough of me waffling on. So tell us about Bitpool. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the CTO of Bitpool. I've been in the building technology industry for 20 years, specialized in building automation and software development, and been going around and trying to extract data from buildings for most of my career. Bitpool's a company that we connect customers to their building data and help them create value from that, and try to keep it relatively simple.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, always good to do that. So why don't we get cracking with the presentation? And
sure.
we can as we go along, we can discuss some points, and then, as I said to everybody, if you've got questions, we'll take them at the end. Take it away, David.
So I'll get you to jump onto the next slide first, because I think we've done the introduction.
We've done the intro. We've done the intro.
Yeah, I think, look, from an AI technology perspective, there's really these two ends of this spectrum, and I'm very much I try to be an anti-hype person, but you also need a little bit of hype to create excitement and show people what the future could look like. But I see at the moment there's really these two ends of the spectrum. There's people who will say it's going to replace people and it's going to save the world, and that might be an extreme. And there's the other end of the spectrum, which is why would we change the way we've always done things? I think as an industry, we should be taking an applied technology view on this, which is in the center, which is, okay, there's a new technology that's available. How can we utilize that? Can it create value for some of the things that we do in buildings or not? And what are the challenges with getting there? Really, once again, and look, we can get challenged in the comments. I really encourage people to challenge us in the comments if you disagree with any of this. But I see it as just another component of a technology stack. As we were discussing in the pre-catch-up, I think some people think it will be this silver bullet that solves all problems, but it's really impossible to extract that value if you don't have some of these other fundamentals in play also. If you want to jump to that next one. I think where we look at this at the very start is, though, that, and you'll see in some of the further slides, is really in buildings, it's a lack of data management problem. Like, buildings contain this wealth of information that everyone wants access to. And that's become more prevalent as modern technologies advance. People are saying we want to extract value from this building data that's contained within our assets. But unfortunately, it's technology is expensive, but it's also very hard to get building data out, believe it or not. And I know there'll be people who sort of agree and disagree with that, but a general statement would be it's actually quite difficult and complex to get that data out. Even if you can get that data out, it often lacks meaning and structure or any sort of sensible naming for other technologies to take advantage of that data. And at the end of all that, you still need some form of platform to gain insights or create value from that data. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be a cloud technology. That could be on-premise systems and things to that effect. But in the modern age where we're sort of interconnecting all of these systems in buildings, when you have these problems such as a lack of meaning and structure, it's nearly impossible to create value from that data and create any meaningful data value from that data.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to the next one. I did before I did the event. I sort of went back and tried to understand some of the challenges that we have. And what I came back to is, the building data environment is actually very unpredictable. In my entire career, even in portfolios of buildings that are owned by one customer, not any building's the same. Different naming conventions, different connected systems, different structures. But if you look at some of the technologies that we deal with in buildings, I mean, Modbus back in 1979, BACnet 1987. Once again, I can get challenged on some of these dates, but the big picture view of that is we're dealing with protocols in buildings that are 30 to 45 years old that have had incremental, let's say, advancements over the years. And typically when we go into the building environment, inconsistent engineering, inconsistent naming conventions, lack of these ontologies. And when we get to some future slides, you'll see some timeframes around that. But currently still that lack of ontologies, lack of data quality. So even if we can get the data, we have, a whole heap of issues that we have to deal with around data quality. And then change management as well. So, once a building is built, and all this technology is put in, if you picture over its life cycle, things change within the building. And when you're dealing with data, that's very hard to deal with if there's not good change management process.
Yeah, good point.
Hopefully, this is the slide that could get some interaction from the comments. What I did was I went back and just plotted all of this out on a timeline. Now, this is based on what we see in the Asia Pacific region. I understand different markets would have different cycles. But when you zoom out on this picture, what I'm just sort of trying to show here is, we had, when we went from sort of pneumatics to DDC, we saw this advent of, these different protocols that allowed people to connect with the data and extract data and do different things with it. And that hyped, and I was actually talking to someone today and they were saying, I remember when BACnet was first released and all the consultants were saying, like BACnet is the solution to everything, and then that dropped off. But really what was interesting, I think around the 2012, 2014, we actually saw the first advent of FDD and analytics providers coming into the market and really changing the game with what they could do with this building data. But then that importance started to play in on, well, we need structured data, we need sensibly named data. When we're dealing with all these different building systems, it's like, how do we extract this and provide some results? And then at least in our market, we saw the peak of that start to come through, digital twins, these independent data layers, converged networks, machine learning. We saw this big peak. But if you look at that bottom line, really, people could overlay OPC and a couple of other protocols in here, but we haven't seen the advancement in, that fundamental data layer and the protocol layer right through until we started to see MQTT coming into play around 2020, 2021. But on that top line now, what you're seeing is now this huge appetite to use these AI technologies, but we still haven't solved that fundamental data access problem, in my view, within buildings. So it's very hard to leverage any sort of value out of these new technologies without solving those problems from the past, let's call it.
Yeah, and we can definitely come back to this one. Just a quick one from me. Is there a reason you put digital twinning there in red? Is there a reason for that?
It was sort of like from what I saw, it was the catalyst for a lot of these converged data systems that we see, like the independent data layer, where people are bringing, security and lighting and HVAC control, energy lifts, all of that stuff. At least for me, that's when I really started to see that need for these large-scale converged systems. It was just highlighted in red because there was definitely a lot of hype in the market around digital twins, and look, they still. It's interesting because what you see is, and I believe this with hype curves, is it doesn't mean they don't have an intrinsic value for building owners or people who are working in that space, but it's really around that initial hype curve that you see all of this excitement, and typically the thing that I hear is, we could do all these great things if only we could access the building data, or if only we could cost effectively access the building data, we could do all of these other amazing things. And it's proven quite interesting how resilient, building technology has been to disruption from outside influences. If you think about that, it's very hard to disrupt, building technologies in some ways because of these challenges around access to data. If data was freely accessible and structured and, conditioned really well, anyone would be able to go into a building and connect within half an hour and enable their platform. But that's actually just not the case today, in my view.
Okay.
Some of these slides I think may be hard to see, so we could post them independently. But I really feel one of the things, and I won't get into the ontology wars. Like, we understand that there's Haystack and there's Brick and there's the Google Digital Building, but really for any ontology, being able to deploy and model buildings in an automated fashion is really key, because otherwise the work input to build that ontology can outweigh the value that it provides. So, if it's going to take $10,000 or $15,000 of labor to create this model, that may be a barrier to entry for some people looking to utilize it now. So our ability to automate that is huge, and I think also the ability. We definitely see that ontology war situation where some people are Brick, some people Haystack. I think interoperability between that in the future is going to be very key. You'll see from these two screens, we support the visualization of that model too, so people can actually see what their building data model looks like when you start to get these different converged systems. Understanding those relationships and understanding how it all glues together is really important. But also having a tool that people can use to quickly create that. Now, I'd say today we do that sort of in a hybrid way. We have some of that functionality at the edge and some at the cloud. We've built it at our cloud layer out of necessity. If I talk from an industry perspective, I'm a massive advocate for that being at the edge in the building as a digital asset that the customer owns, because it is an investment. When you go into building those models, the customer's investing money to build it. We've created mechanisms of obviously being able to export those models to give back to our customers and then import them into other technologies. So it's all in standard format. But I am still a big advocate for those models being stored at the edge. The challenge is having the available technology to do that, I feel. Not everyone has that ability to do that. This is just a high-level view. My dev team would kill me in some ways because I've probably drawn some of these things not quite accurately, but I tried to just give you a simple view. This is just the conditioning pipeline to condition the data before it goes to our AI. We call it an AI pipeline where it enters into our LLMs and things like that. And this is really important because what we're actually doing, if we go from the left, we're ingesting data, either flat file CSV, BMS data. We do ingest other ontologies as well, so using Haystack API and things to that effect. Third-party APIs are MQTT. We're ingesting this raw data, and the first thing that we do with it is to collect and store. So we're just collecting and storing that data. We then cleanse it. So we use a number of different techniques and models to cleanse the data, so aligning timestamps and filling gaps and things to that effect. We then model the data, and we forecast and predict. So we actually always will look to forecast any data stream that comes into the platform. And in our platform, what we have is we have source data and then what we call estimated data. So we actually create two data streams from one being the original source data, and then the other one is the condition data. So we can always compare the two, and we give that a data quality score. So what we're able to do with any data stream is actually estimate the data quality and how much of that new data stream is filled with predicted data versus the real source data. From there, all of our other technology stack, including our public API, can use that. Now, I'm talking in context to Bitpool and our product, but this would be a pretty classic sort of data pipeline for any technology, and this could be repeated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. From there, once we have like all of that data conditioned, and once again, it goes back to some of those fundamentals that we were talking about at the start, is, and I think you named it in the event, it's sort of garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely.
The whole purpose of that data pipeline is actually to fix a lot of the problems that happen in buildings. If we had more sophisticated storage mechanisms in the building, then I would still argue we would still do that process, but there wouldn't be the absolute reliance on it to be able to generate some sort of quality insight. Did you have any comments on that? You look like you were going to ask a question, Jack.
No, just back to this one. You mentioned about modeling. So that's you're using in that ML pipeline. You're using machine learning to create the data model based on all those inputs. Is that
to an extent? Yeah,
okay.
It's not completely automated. So if you think of something like BACnet as a protocol, if we're able to get units, we can take certain elements from the names and things to that effect, but it is by no means completely automated. I think there may be other companies out there that have solved that problem. We haven't solved the full automation problem by any means, but I think it is the holy grail for most companies to be able to completely automate that. Yeah. I think just at this point in time, understanding all the challenges to do that it's a big problem to
indeed
solve.
It is indeed. All right, let's look at some let's look at some of the ways you've then the user interface and how then what you're layering on top of the data, right?
Yeah, so this comes back to that in that AI pipeline, really making sure the model understands what it is looking at. So you may not be able to see it from these screens, and I'll post some YouTube content of a live demo of this just to give everyone the feel. But
nice.
We're actually pushing a whole heap of metadata, a whole heap of our condition data, along with those data quality scores, and then allowing the LLM to take over and do things like create visualizations and create insights. Now, you'll see in some of the further slides, our reporting engine is completely automated in that sense. But what we wanted to do was change the way the user interacts with data. One of the problems that we hear a lot is, well, I don't understand what I'm seeing. And you've got to essentially try and accommodate a whole heap of different skills. If we think of property, we go from everything from the facility manager to design engineers, consultants, sustainability managers. So we're trying to actually create an experience where anyone can get insight out of the data, whether it's super complex or a simplified view. So what we've seen here is just literally our AI model taking over and creating a detailed insight and visualization of that insight. So it'll mark up anomalies within the data, gaps, any of the meta model tags that exist, and create that for you. If you go to that next slide, in this example, what it's actually doing is it's taken that model and it's taken the raw energy consumption, converted it to watt hours per square meter. And this is across our demo site of 4 buildings. But then what we've asked it to do is actually rank the properties from the best performing property to the worst performing property based on those metrics. And that's the view on the right. So you can see there's obviously one facility in red that is using high energy per square meter, and the best performing property in green down the bottom. If you extend this across 50 properties, it's an extremely powerful thing to be able to do, which is to go into a portfolio of buildings and essentially ask that question and get that instantaneous result. This extends down to equipment as well. So I just wanted to give everyone like two views. You can see there, it's hard to stop a train. Former train employee here. When we talk about equipment, what we're able to do is actually model things like the approach temperatures and calculate new things from. This is all just using the high-level interface data from the machine, so no building automation data, just machine data. And we're able to do a whole heap of things around insights with this. Once again, trying to understand the potential forecast on when vessels need to be cleaned for performance issues, high star hours ratios, and actually putting that into an automated report that can be sent out. And that could be sent out across either one piece of equipment or 1,000 pieces of equipment. And I think that's where we see the real power of this technology is it's being able to do those sort of those tasks that would take massive amounts of hours to produce the insights and the data and curate that, but also put that into a readable report is where this can really, really help. But getting back to those initial problems, if we think about the access to data, now this is a BACnet machine, it's the HLI. If you think about if we couldn't get that data, or if the data didn't make sense and we didn't model it and we didn't have consistent data, we didn't condition and cleanse it and align all of the data timestamps, the output to which you would get would be garbage, to be honest. And we experienced that in the early days when we started experimenting with the technology. So it's so important to make sure that you actually do all of those other steps before using this. Unfortunately, it's not as simple, in my view, as just putting data to one of these models and expecting to get great outcomes.
And you mentioned this already, right? This is the AI-generated reporting that you guys
correct, yeah. The thing with this, what we wanted to change was the way our customers would experience reporting. So if anyone's ever had reports come out of systems, the classic one you get is you get this automated report that may go out to a facility manager, as an example. And you get the report and you don't actually understand what's in the report because it's either highly technical or the way it's been designed has been highly technical. When we went to do our new reports manager, what we're able to do, this is a report that's automatically emailed out. You can actually reply to the email. If the report was too complex, or you needed to simplify it, or you needed to recreate the report for a different audience, you're able to simply reply to the email, ask it to do that, and you will get a different report back.
Nice. Yeah.
Now, I'll say to everyone too, we're here talking about this technology, but picture it as a journey. Nothing is ever perfect day one. Just because we say we're doing reporting today and it's great, you're on this journey of taking something from infancy through to an end use case. So I think the ability where we get to with all this, and like I said, we can't show it on here, but we also have voice and speech interaction as well. I think people want to interact with their buildings in a different way, or at least in the future. The traditional way that we've done things won't be applicable, especially to the next generation of younger people who come into the building space and go, oh man, we're still using this computer that's sitting in the office that we've got to go to and pull out CSVs and put a report together. I think that's where this is just super critical, that we at least try to understand the technology and the value that it can bring to the table.
Yeah. Good. All right. We can get to some questions. I just had one thing I wanted to ask you. We can go back to this one, of course. You said something I thought was really interesting to me before we started about how AI could potentially, one of the impacts might be that it makes people realize how little data they're getting out of their buildings, right?
Yeah.
Do you? I've heard of some companies taking this, or using AI as well to synthesize data, or model it and then use that model to create data. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you think that there's that's interesting, or?
I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting. The thing for me though is we take a very simplistic view to it, where you've sort of got to crawl, walk, and then run. And classically, and as that hype curve shows, is we always jump to the end rather than going through the steps to get to the end, if that makes sense. I feel that it's really important that we don't jump to the end with this one. There's so many things that we leave behind over time, and
Yeah.
I've just lost that slide, just so you know. The share screen's disappeared. So if we look back and we say, in a lot of these protocols are 30 to 45 years old, the concern would be is trying to step to that next step before we solve those problems. I don't know if I've answered that question well enough for you, but I just feel like there's always going to be interesting things that we can do.
Yeah.
But actually stepping through and getting these other things right is more critical and important from my perspective anyway.
Yeah. No, I know. Totally understand. Right. Anyone who has a question, now is the time. 2 ways you can do it. If you're on YouTube, you can just put one in the chat, or if you are on,
I'm also happy for anyone on the stream to update my my hype cycle drawing for me.
You should have some sort of live way of, you could draw on it. Maybe that's next. We can. Yeah. My colleague.
I mean, we didn't get to talk. Well, sorry.
No, I was going to say my colleague put a question in. Thanks, Daphne. She said she'd seen a press release about your entry into the UK market last year with support from an investor, Wiesman. Can you talk about that a little bit and how you see that partnership developing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, a bit of a plug out to Wiesman. Wiesman have been a great supporter of Bitpool. They invested in the company. Interestingly, we share very similar aspirations for end goals around sustainability and access to building data and what our technology can do for people who are trying to solve those problems. Like, we're very, very cognizant of, we are just a tool for other people to use and solve problems within the building. But Wiesman bring a whole range of skill sets and network to us that allows us to rapidly accelerate with our product, I would say. And, one of those is another company called Oaks Energy. And, through partnership with Oaks, we've been able to do some amazing things in buildings in the UK, especially around renewable energies and things to that effect, and getting data out of those systems for them.
Very interesting. Yeah, and I think, obviously they're required by Carrier last year as well.
Correct.
So I think that's a really interesting move. They've been going through a big portfolio transformation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't want to talk too much out of turn, but the climate solution business was unbelievable, but they were able to transition that through Wiesman investments and invest in something that I'd say is an unbelievable purpose for the future as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. No more questions at the moment, but please, anyone out there, if you got, or even a comment, then feel free to put one in. I think
we didn't touch. Sorry, go.
No, you go ahead.
I think one of the things we didn't touch on too is obviously, and I don't know about the UK market, I'm assuming it's a global problem, which is, the massive skills deficit that we have within the industry. I mean, across all skill sets. Excuse me. One of the key challenges, I think, with any of this is, and when you look at that timeline of the age technology, it takes a lot of expertise at the moment to extract building data and condition it for use. So that's going to be another challenge, I think, especially with generational shift, when we have a lot of our great skill sets looking at, exiting and retiring out of our industries. We're faced with a very significant skills shortage. So this problem, in my view, is only going to become more challenging rather than less challenging. And the appetite, if you look at the emerging technologies, the appetite for building data is going to increase, not decrease.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, this is one of the big hopes, isn't it, of AI, that it solves some of the skill shortages problem. I saw some report from an analyst recently about potential for, in cybersecurity, for example, of closing that skills gap. But it's just it's quite early to tell, isn't it? But I think there's some exciting potential there. How far it goes in closing that skills gap,
I think
we're
that's the
not sure yet.
definition of a disruptive technology, right, James? It's sort of
Hmm.
the unknown. You know, everyone's excited by it. I think we're starting to see some really good uses or use cases for it, some good application of it, but
Yeah,
it's still very early.
yeah, yeah. Indeed. Um, yeah, I think going back. I mean, I don't know if we can bring up that slide we had. There we go. No, I think it's super interesting, and as you said, like if you post some of we post some of the slides, I'm sure we'll get some comments on it later.
Mm.
But
I mean, if you go back to FTD and analytics as an example, you'll see
uh-huh.
I noted that twice on the chart.
Yeah.
We saw a big advent of that, at least once again in our market, back around that 2014 mark.
Hmm.
But back then, Australia's always been very progressive around sustainability and especially building performance and energy goals. We've got neighbours and things to that effect.
Yeah.
But you can see now it's actually come back into the fold. It's actually very prevalent again as customers are looking to decarbonize, to optimize their outgoings and things to that effect. So the reason I put that on there twice is things can go through a hype cycle, come back down, but then become
Mm.
just as important in the future. And I think that's what you'll see. If I was actually fair, we were seeing the release of things like BACnet Secure Connect. So there's some modernization of those protocols that have
Mm-hmm.
been brought forward into there. I didn't draw that on there, but still, when we look at this and we zoom out on this window, there's been significant investment in new technologies coming into the markets with the upper end of town.
Mm.
But at the base layer, like the simplicity of extracting building data and doing that simply, it's very it's been limited, let's say, across its lifetime.
Mm.
And once again, I'm sure people will challenge me. I'm painting some pretty broad brushes here,
Sure.
but just it's a general comment. There are great companies that are out there dealing with this problem, but nothing at a scale which will enable us to rapidly move forward with new emerging technologies.
Yeah. Well, we've actually run out of time. I mean, if anyone does have any
Perfect.
questions, I mean, the recording stays up, and if you want to add some comments, then feel free. I'm sure myself or David will see those, and we can reply. Look,
Perfect.
thanks so much for taking the time. It's a really interesting presentation, and I think this subject is we're just at the beginning, I think, of this journey, and it's really some really useful thoughts there. So appreciate it.
Not a problem, James.
And thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you again soon. We'll be doing another live stream next month. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. See you soon. Bye for now.